Hey, Wumburg World Entertainment, and of course, 28 years later came out this summer to very positive reviews for the most part, but the movie didn't perform quite as well as they were expecting. Now, there's things all over the place regarding the budget. They're trying to say the budget was 60. The actual number was 75, but with the tax breaks, it brought it down to 64. So it's not 60, it's 64, meaning with the marketing, it needed to make over 150 to break even. Now, it did make the 150, but it just about made the 150. So basically, if this thing actually broke even, it's brought in a couple of $1 million. That's it at best. But of course, this was to set up the first part of a new trilogy for the 20 years franchise, basically. And now we're getting word of test screenings for The Bone Temple, which is the second part. We're also being given an update regarding the third movie, mainly that there's nothing really happening with it as of yet. And quite frankly, with how pretty much the first one underperformed, and yeah, there's no denying it underperformed, because they don't make these movies to break even. They make these movies to make money and crap tons of it. But what Danny Boyle says, what they're doing to try and convince Sony to give them the money to finance the third movie is ridiculous. But we are going to have a look at this. Now, it doesn't go into specifics or anything like that, so there's no real spoilers there, except for the thing that should be the end. It's something we've all been told about. We were expected to be in the last one. It's not. It's meant to be in this one. So I'll let you know when we get to that point if you don't want to know what this mild spoiler is. But other than that, there's no real spoiler. It doesn't give anything away, particularly regarding the main story and stuff like that. But let's have a look at this anyway. So it's saying Danny Boyle's 28 years later opened to overwhelmingly positive reviews earlier this year, but it wasn't the box office hit that Sony Pictures likely anticipated. The movie only managed to gross $150 million at the worldwide box office, a decent result on a $60 million budget. Again, it's not $60 million, but one which means the filmmaker's planned trequel depends on the success of Nia DaCosta's 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Well, there may be some good news on that front. World of Real reports that a recent test screening went well and featured multiple applaud breaks during the film. One attendee even told the site that "I thought part 1 was outstanding, but this surpassed it." Now, before we continue on, let's take this all with grains of salt. We don't know whether or not there was actually this test screening. There very most likely was. But we're going to kind of temper your expectations for this thing, because realistically, these are people who were probably selected to come in and praise the thing overall because they needed to be a win. Let's be realistic about that. This isn't probably just your everyday Joe Soaps being brought in and they're going nuts. Like, this idea that there was multiple applause breaks during the film. So what, every 10 minutes they were stopping to clap? Like, are you shitting me? I don't believe that for a second. Plus, when we go into the whole test screening stuff, you have to keep in mind that you'll always have a version of people loved it. They're not going to really tell you the version of, oh, these people hated it. You're not going to really get that. So until we hear kind of the more reactions from this, I think we have to take this with a grain of salt, because let's face facts here, people. How many films have we heard, oh, that got a 10-minute standing ovation, and then you watch the movie and you go, how did this thing even get an ovation, never mind for 10 minutes? It's like, come on now. And the fact that, yeah, if the first one, which is 28 years later, didn't quite have the legs at the box office, then what realistic chance does this one have? So it's saying anyway, despite the mixed response to Jack O'Connell's Jimmy, he debuted in a tonally jarring action scene in the closing moments of 28 years later. This screening has seen him touted as delivering the villain performance of the year. Now, you have to keep in mind as well, the whole thing with the Jimmy character was that he was the Jimmy Gang. Him and what everyone is calling the Power Rangers, because, yeah, that closing scene was just ridiculous. But he's meant to be Jimmy Savile. That's what their inspiration is. And there's people trying to defend it and stuff. I don't really think you can defend it. Even if they're going, oh yeah, but he's the villain, so get it. It's kind of going down. For anyone who doesn't know who Jimmy Savile is, look him up for yourself, because he was a guy who pretty much worked at the BBC and got away with a lot of heinous crap that they knew about and covered up. So yeah, but this is saying anyway, the site adds, the central dynamic is essentially a duel between O'Connell and Ralph Fiennes, Bone Shearer, Dr. Ian Kelson, who has a larger role than in the first installment and delivers a performance that's even better than the previous film. The third act, which reportedly features a sequence that will be talked about for much of 2026, is similarly praised, as is Alex Garland's script. Now, this coming up, not this first part that we're going to talk about, but it's what gets added into this, is the mild spoiler. So if you don't want to know what that part is, I'll let you know right as we're about to talk about it. But the first part of this says, also of note is the fact that Nia DaCosta hasn't gone down the iPhone/handheld camera route, instead choosing to embrace a more orthodox shooting style. Now is the moment where we're getting into the possible, well, the mild spoiler. So if you don't want to know, cheers for being here, cheers for sticking with the video for so long, and like, share and subscribe and all that good stuff, and make sure you hit the bell button, all that good stuff. But if you're sticking around, just be aware it is a mild spoiler. And the reason I say it's mild is because we were expecting this in the first one and it's not there, and apparently it will be in this one, albeit very, very small. So here it is, you've been warned. So, however, with Cillian Murphy only expected to have a few seconds of screen time in 28 years later, The Bone Temple, whether any of this will help make it a box office draw is hard to say. So that mild spoiler is that Cillian Murphy is meant to be back. We were expecting that in the first one because they were hinting that he was coming back, and now they're confirming that he is in this one, albeit for a few seconds. So it sounds like it's pretty much going to be a blink and you miss it, or it's going to be just, it closes out with him standing there something for a brief second and it goes out. This is where this gets really ridiculous when it comes to the whole Cillian Murphy crap though. So it's saying, zombies are no longer as popular as they once were, but if Sony can market this follow-up in a way that perhaps less niche and a tad more mainstream, then odds are a third chapter will happen. We'd bet on Murphy being included in the trailers anyway. Everything the article says there is retarded. To try and say you can't market it really as a zombie movie, you gotta market more as a mainstream movie, is ridiculous, because to start with, it's already aimed at a particular section of an audience. How could you try and convince, hey, the actual fourth movie in this franchise is ready for all of you to come and see it? And the fact that they literally said Cillian Murphy is in it for a few seconds, they think they're going to put him in the trailer? No, you're not going to put him in the trailer at all. So it says here, and this is what Danny Boyle said earlier this summer. So he was saying, Nia gets a bit of Cillian at the end. All I can say is you have to wait for Cillian, but hopefully he will help us get the third film financed. This is where it's starting to get a bit weird. Wait to hear this part. You promised the studio Cillian Murphy. That's quite a deflection of any technical concerns. They soon forget. Yeah, we nakedly use that to get our own way. What better promise could you make? We haven't got the money for the third one yet. It will depend how the first one does, I guess. But hopefully, if we do okay, they'll give us the go-ahead for the money and for the third one. Everybody's standing by for that, really, including Cillian. So what Danny Boyle has just said there is what they did was to try and convince the studio to give them money, was to promise them, oh yeah, we can get Cillian Murphy back in this movie. The studio was probably thinking, how could you possibly do that? He's a big star now, he's an Oscar winner now. It's going to cost us a fortune to get him on board. And they probably promised him, no it won't, it'll cost us next to nothing, trust us. And as you see there, whatever technical concerns they had, so obviously they probably had concerns about the way they wanted to film it and all this stuff, they used Cillian Murphy's name as a way to get the studio to forget about what they were doing over here. It was pretty much a look at the shiny in this hand, forget what's in this hand. But you're also hearing them there saying, hopefully the movie does well enough to guarantee we'll get that third movie. It didn't do enough to guarantee you that third movie. In fact, we've already heard that Sony are kind of very hesitant about moving forward with that third movie. They have no option with the second one because that was already filmed. But it doesn't look like that third movie is going to happen because, quite frankly, with how underperforming 28 years later did, there's not a hope that the Bone Temple is going to do better. It can't. The laws of diminishing returns has to be that it will make less. So that's not good. So this wraps up saying, in 28 years later, it's been almost 3 decades since the Rage fighters escaped the biological weapons laboratory, and now blah blah blah, we know all that. So 28 years later, The Bone Temple is set to be released in theaters on January 16th, 2026. So it's not all that far away. But again, we kind of have to take a step back and go, okay, it was a test screening. But it's also interesting that you notice, even though they're saying an attendee told the site that, oh, I thought the first one was outstanding, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't say exactly whether that attendee was someone who works for the studio or not, or whether they were actual just a movie-going audience, like the general audience, that were asked, hey, you want to come see a test screening for something? And then once they're in there, they're told, oh yeah, you're about to see 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Either way, we still have to take a big grain of salt when it comes to this stuff, because again, we have to hear the other side. You can't just have this universal praise for this thing in one test screening, because we know there's going to be people in there who are going to come out and say, Jesus, that sucked. Like, that 28 years later, love the trailers. And this is where they're going like, oh, the overwhelmingly positive reviews and blah, blah, blah. The trailers smashed records and everything. Good for the trailer. It's a trailer. And the trailer pretty much lied to the audience for what that movie was, because they showed us it was a true continuation with zombies everywhere. Well, the Ragers and stuff everywhere. And that's not what the movie was at all. It absolutely was not that movie. You were being shown it was a movie about a son and father going out in this hunt and getting stuck in, and that's not even what the movie was about. So they lied to you. You kind of struggled at the box office. It didn't have the legs that they were hoping it would have, and nobody has truly been on board with the idea that Nia DaCosta, the maker of The Marvels, is the person in charge of this, and we're supposed to believe that this movie was so groundbreakingly brilliant that it kept getting multiple applause breaks during it. I'll believe it when I see it, but we'll see what happens. So, with that, I shall leave it there for this one. So, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.